Alrighty, I have rinsed the blue liquid out of this stuff. Well, we got a thick layer of silver mud down here on the bottom of this filter. That is nice. Well, hello scrappers, Mike here. Welcome back to my channel. What's going on today? Well, we've got this big bin up on the workbench. And what is in this bin, you ask? What are we going to process today? Well, in this bin, we've got a whole lot of keyboard Mylars that my friend Johnny in Finland sent me to process for him. He's got a lot of keyboard Mylars here. So we're going to try and get the silver out of them. Keyboard Mylars have a lot of silver in them, so we're going to try and recover that for Johnny. Now, I've already recovered pounds and pounds of silver for Johnny from some relay contacts he sent me. If you want to see that process, I'll put a link to that video in the upper right. You can check that out, or at least it's actually a series of videos. So I'll put a link to the first one, and you can work your way through if you want to. But today we're going to do Johnny's keyboard Mylars. So, what's the best way to do keyboard Mylars? I'm sure a lot of you are asking out there. Well, you know, there's several different ways you can do them. Some people swear by burning them and, you know, processing the ashes for the silver. And that's one way to go, I suppose. I would prefer not to do that if I can avoid it, because it's just going to make a whole lot of smoke. And there's little dots of silver on those. Okay, it's interesting looking keyboard Mylars. So, yeah, I would prefer not to go that route. Now, another way, and I've done it this way before with keyboard Mylars, and I'll put a link to that video in the upper right if you want to check that out. But I think we're just going to repeat it, maybe with a few minor changes here to make it more efficient. I'm going to put these in a bucket with a lot of distilled water and some nitric acid, and let the nitric acid etch the silver off of the Mylars. And then we'll recover the silver from the liquid left in the bucket. We'll filter it, get all the plastic bits out of it, and then recover the silver from it. We can either do it by the lye sugar method or by the cementing it out on copper method. I haven't really decided how I want to do it yet, so we'll see. Anyway, now some of these Mylars, like these right here, are covered with something really, really sticky, and they're 2-layer, and I don't think nitric acid is really going to do much for these. Johnny, did these come from like microwave ovens or something? Leave a comment or email me and let me know where you got these. These I think I might actually have to incinerate. So I'm going to set these aside so that I can do those separately, because I don't think the nitric acid is going to touch them. These, on the other hand, I think we can probably etch the silver off of them pretty well just by treating them with dilute nitric acid. Now, I think rather than doing it like I did last time, though, I think I'm going to cut them up first and make them a lot smaller so that the nitric acid has a better chance of contacting everything, because they tend to stick together. And I think if I cut them up smaller into smaller pieces, I can stir them and make sure during the process that nitric acid gets to, you know, attack everything in here. So I'm going to cut them up. We'll talk about how I'm going to cut them up in a bit. We might want to calculate a yield. So I need a weight on this. So how are we going to weigh it? And I'm going to leave these separate. We'll calculate a separate yield on these things when I do them. But we're going to get my scale out here, and we'll weigh what we've got here. And yes, I know, Richard, I am weighing the container. What I will do is, once I have this emptied, I'll weigh it and subtract the weight of the container from what we get. So it looks like we've got 4 kilograms, 16 grams. So 4.016. So 4,016 grams, or 8 pounds, 13.7 ounces. So that's what we've got. So I will, like I said, I will subtract the weight of the container here from those weights once I get all this stuff out of it. And then we'll be able to calculate an accurate yield. Okay, so I'm going to set this stuff aside, out of the way, and we'll get started cutting this stuff up. So it will hopefully be able to etch all of the silver off of it without too much trouble. All right, let's see what this container weighs empty. 1 kilogram, 132 grams. I don't know if that's showing up. So I will do the math and subtract the weight of the container from the weight that I got with the container full, and I'll put it up on the screen because I can't do the math in my head. I'll do it off camera. So how am I going to cut all these keyboard Mylars, there's hundreds of them in here, into manageable pieces so that all of the silver on them can be exposed to the nitric acid? Well, just do it with scissors. That's a possibility. You might end up with cramps after a while. My friend Jim actually gave me a paper shredder for use with this, but it kept jamming. So I don't think that's going to work. So how are we going to do this efficiently? Well, I've got an idea. I've got one of these right here. So I'm going to feed them through a few at a time and chop them up into small pieces and dump them down into this bucket over here. And I think that will probably be the best way to go. So let me see how well it works. Okay, I'll grab a few Mylars here. Well, that might be a few too many. Okay, that's a little better. Yeah, definitely can't do too many at once. But it is working. Okay, we put all the pieces down here in this bucket. And I'll keep cutting. I think I'll do a few less than I did initially. See if we can make it work a little better. Okay, I'm maybe close to halfway done. I'm wearing gloves so I don't get blisters on my hand from all the chopping. But I've got a few observations that may have an impact on our eventual yield. First off, there's a lot of Mylars here, and my bucket is filling up fast. So this might get divided into 2 batches, okay? Because I don't think I have enough room in this bucket, and I don't think I have enough distilled water on hand to do 2 buckets worth. So I think this might get divided up into 2 batches. Secondly, if we take a look at what I'm pulling out here, we may not get a huge yield out of these, even though there's a lot of Mylars here. A lot of them have these silicone dots all over them, which I think are probably most of the weight of the stuff. Some of the Mylars only have tiny little dots of silver on them, if that's even silver. I am not certain if that's silver or not. Some don't have any silver on them. They're just blank Mylar. I'm trying to throw those away when I find them. And some might have graphite traces instead of silver, though I don't have one handy to show you right now. I've seen a few that look like they might have graphite traces instead of silver. So I'm not going to get my hopes up for a huge yield of silver out of these things. You probably shouldn't get your hopes up either, Johnny. Yeah, these keyboard Mylars have a lot of those silicone blobs on them, and I think that's going to be where most of the weight is here. And ones like this, there's hardly any silver there. So, yeah. But we shall persevere. I'm going to try and get some more in this bucket. I don't think I'm going to be able to get them all in, but I'll get some more in, and then we'll get this started. Okay, I think I'm close to 2/3 done chopping these up. My bucket down here is about 2/3 full, but I think that's as much as I want to put in the bucket. I want to be able to stir this stuff periodically to make sure everything gets in contact with the acid. So I don't want to overfill the bucket. So clearly we're going to have a second chopping session to finish this stuff up. Now my idea here for how I want to do this is I'm going to put enough distilled water in the bucket so that everything can be covered. And then I'll start adding nitric acid to it. I have a fair amount of nitric acid on hand. I knew Johnny was going to give me a lot of work, so I have bought liters and liters of this stuff. So I've got plenty of it on hand. And I think what I'm going to do is I'll just stir this every day, maybe a couple times a day, morning and evening maybe. And when it looks like all of the silver's been etched off this stuff, what I'll do is I'll drain the liquid out of the bucket through a strainer, keep the liquid, and then chop up the rest of this stuff and put it in the liquid, maybe with a little extra nitric acid, and do the rest of it. So I've only got one batch of liquid to process. So I think that's probably the most efficient way to go. And the wind has blown some bits of Mylar around. I'll pick them up off the ground and make sure they get into the bucket before I get started. So yeah, I think that's going to probably be the most efficient way to go. Okay, so let me get moving on this. Alrighty, let's get this show on the road. It's going to take a lot of distilled water. I do have more if these aren't enough. I got a feeling it's going to be enough though. I got a PVC pipe here that I can use for stirring this, which I will do regularly. I'm expecting this to take days or a week to work. So it'll probably get stirred once or twice a day. Because I expect, these things are going to lay flat against each other. And unless I stir it, there's going to be a lot of dead spots in there that the acid's not going to get to. So I think it's going to take stirring. It took stirring last time to make it work. Is that enough? I think that's enough. With stirring, everything should get attacked by the acid, I believe. Okay. Make sure everything gets down in the acid. Well, there's no acid in there yet, but there will be in a minute. Okay. I'm going to put maybe about 2/3 of a liter of nitric acid here. I'm going to put about half of this in. So we're going to wind up with about 1/3 of a liter of nitric acid in here. Maybe just a splash more, just to be safe. Okay. Now this is pretty dilute acid, so I'm not expecting a vigorous reaction. But it will produce a lot of nitrogen dioxide fumes over time. I have more acid. I can put it in when and if necessary. In fact, I can smell nitrogen dioxide coming off of this already. All right, so what I need to do is put a lid on this loosely so that the gases evolving can come out. I'm going to put a rock on that to keep the wind from blowing the lid off because it's probably going to rain later today. I don't want a bunch of rainwater in there, filling it up till it overflows. And we'll leave it out here in the sun. When the sun's out, the heat from the sun will help the reaction. So we'll just leave it out here, right next to my foundry furnace. And there we go. And I will stir it a couple of times a day until it looks like all of the silver is gone. If I need more nitric acid, I will put it on. I have a lot more than that. I'm just trying to be conservative with it and not waste it. Okay, it's a long-term project. It's probably going to take at least a week before we're ready to start processing the rest of the Mylars through here. All right, it's been a couple days. I've been stirring it morning and evening. I even put the rest of that bottle of nitric acid in here that I started with. But I gotta say, I am not really seeing a whole lot of activity in here. Maybe a bit. I am reluctant to use much more nitric acid because I know there's not a huge amount of silver in here. I don't want to, use more value in nitric acid than I'm going to get out of it in silver. I think what I'm going to do is let this go a couple more days, maybe until next weekend, and then test the liquid to see if there's any silver dissolved in it, because I can't really tell looking at it. I think the last time I did this, by now the liquid was turning blue, which is actually from copper, not silver. But I still see a lot of silver traces on this stuff undissolved. So I'm not sure what's going on. But maybe more silver is going into solution. I think there is. So anyway, this doesn't work. I'll just fall back on incineration, I guess. Anyway, we'll let it go a little while longer. I'll check the liquids for silver content. All right, it's been about a week. And I've been trying to remember to come out and stir this a couple times a day. I have to say, it doesn't really look like there's been much progress here. Although, I can get a whiff of nitrogen dioxide out of this when I open it up. Maybe I shouldn't stand right over it when I do it. So, after about a week, what I want to find out here is if there's actually anything happening. Is there any silver in solution? So, let's check that. See if I'm just wasting my time. Because I think some of this stuff is graphite, and some of it's sandwiched between two layers of plastic, and the acid's not getting to it, so we'll see how much silver we've actually got out of this stuff. Anyway, I want to know if there's any silver in this liquid in here, so I've got a little beaker with a splash of muriatic acid in some tap water. Let's see what we get. Oh my, yeah, we are getting some silver in there. Oh yeah, how cloudy that's getting. I'll give you a close-up of that. That's quite cloudy. Yeah, see how cloudy that is? So we've definitely got some silver in there because it turned to silver chloride on contact with that muriatic acid in there. Okay, so this is working. It's just working very slowly. I'm reluctant to put more acid in there because nitric acid's expensive, and I know there's not going to be a whole heck of a lot of silver there. So, maybe I should just let it go for a while longer. And maybe the next batch I could just chop up finer so that the acid can get to everything. Well, I'll give it some thought. I'll lit it back up and give it some thought. I mean, we've been going for a week. This is a long-term project. There's no rush. So I'll give it a serious think and decide where to go from here. Feel free to leave a comment below this video and tell me what you'd do if you were in my position and trying to get some silver out of these keyboard Mylars. I'm all ears. Let me know. All right, it has been a couple of weeks. I wasn't intending it to be in here this long, but I got really busy with work and other stuff, so this stuff's been in here for a couple of weeks. I've been trying to remember to stir it at least once or twice a day. But anyway, after being in here this long, I think we've probably gotten all the silver out of it that we're going to get. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump this liquid off into another bucket through a strainer and strain out all of the plastic bits in here. And then we'll put some more stuff in the liquid and maybe add another splash of nitric acid to it. I'll put the rest of Johnny's keyboard Mylars in the liquid, and we'll let them go for a while. Maybe as long as another couple of weeks. And then we'll deal with trying to get the silver back out of the liquid, okay? So let me go find another bucket, and I will do that. Okay, so here we go. Another bucket. Got a colander to strain the stuff. I'm sure there's still some active nitric acid in here that we can use to attack the next batch of Mylar. I've been cutting it up off camera, so I can just feed it in here in a minute. Yeah, there it is. So I think what I'm going to do is just let this stuff drain for a while. And then I'll set it aside and we'll put the fresh batch of Mylars in there. To drain as much of the liquid off of this as we can so we don't lose any significant amount of the silver the liquid contains. All right, let that drain for a few minutes, then we'll put the fresh Mylars in. Okay, this has had a little while to drain. There's all the spent stuff. So let me get the rest of this stuff in here. Without getting it all over the yard. Fortunately, it's not windy today. Well, I guess I'm going to have to pick some up out of the yard. Oh well. Here we go. There's all of Johnny's keyboard Mylars. Finally. Okay, they're all in. Give it a good stir. Actually, you know what? Before I stir it, I think I'm going to give it an extra shot of nitric acid. I suspect there's still some active nitric acid in here, but we're going to add to it. I'll be able to tell in a few days whether it was working or not, but we'll just make sure that there's plenty of active nitric acid in there. And as per before, I will try to remember to stir this stuff every day or two so that everything gets exposed to the acid. I think the first time I did this, I put rocks on top of it to make sure everything was underwater, but I think this is working pretty good. Just stirring it regularly and making sure that the same ones aren't on top. Okay, let me lid it up, put the rock back on it to keep the wind from blowing the lid off, and let it go. Let it go for maybe a couple more weeks. We'll see. So it's been about 2 more weeks, and I've stirred it regularly. So I think the second batch is about as done as it's going to get. So just like before, I'm going to pour this stuff off through a colander, catch all the plastic, let the liquid go through. Gonna let this stuff drain. For a while. 15, 20 minutes, half hour, and get as much of the liquid off of it as I can before we move on. Yeah, see it draining over there? Still dripping. So we're just going to let it go for a while. Alrighty, so here's our liquid. After extracting as much silver as I could out of those Mylars. Did I get it all? I'm sure I did not. Short of burning it and processing the ashes, I don't think it's possible to get it all. I didn't really want to burn that much plastic though. So we'll just have to suffer a little bit of loss. So how am I going to get the silver out of this stuff? Well, I'm going to throw some copper pipes in there. Like so. And I am going to let them bring the silver out of solution. They're already doing it. Now, I have no doubt that there's some unreacted nitric acid in there yet, so I expect we're probably going to digest a lot of copper, but that's okay. I've got more copper, so I've got more where that came from, although I kind of doubt I'll need it. But yeah, it's starting already. Yep, silver's coming out of solution. So hopefully we will get a significant amount of silver out of this stuff. How much do I think is there? I have no idea. Really, I have no idea. How much do I hope is there? Well, given the cost of the nitric acid, I'm hoping to get at least 1/4 of an ounce. I'll break even with it at 1/4 of an ounce. Beyond that is profit money-wise, so I'm not counting my time and effort. So really, a lot of it was just this stuff sitting out in the sun for a month. So not that much effort went into it. Cutting up the Mylars was the effort. So we'll just let this go. I'll check on it from time to time. Yeah, silver's starting to plate out and come off. And I'll add more copper to it as necessary. And we'll see what the end result is. It may take a few days. All right, it's been about 3 days. And full disclosure, the first couple of pipes I put in here completely disappeared. So I think I feel bits of them down on the bottom. So I put some other pipes in here, and they are still pretty much intact. Doesn't even look like they've appreciably thinned. So, okay. Anyway, I'm going to dump this liquid, this now very blue liquid, off through a colander with a couple layers of paper in it to filter off however much silver there is in this stuff. Hopefully, there's a decent amount. See a little bit of silver coming over. Probably enough to clog the paper up pretty soon anyway. Yeah, see the silver in there? I see lots of sparklies on the surface. Right. Yeah, we're starting to clog up. It's slowing down some. But I'll get all this stuff through. Oh yeah, we're getting a nice layer of silver on the paper. Oh yeah, I see some silver on the bottom. So this is slowing down, so it's going to take me a little while to get all the liquid through. I'll pull the remains of the pipes out of there and rinse them off. In fact, I'll do that right now before I forget. I don't want them to puncture the paper. Ooh, that is really thin too, let me tell you. That is really thin. Yep, between the excess nitric acid in here and the copper having to go into solution to displace the silver. Chewed up a lot of copper. It's okay. I got plenty of copper. Alright, so I'm just going to keep filtering this. The filter paper here is clogging up pretty bad, so it's going to take a while, but I hope you can see the silver mud. Down in the bottom of this bucket. So there is a fair amount of silver mud down there. We'll see if it's enough to make a profit on. Okay, I got all the liquid and all the silver mud in there. I'm just going to let that blue liquid drain through the filter. It's going to take a while now because everything's clogged. And then I'm going to spray a bunch of distilled water on the filter there to drive the blue liquid out of the silver mud. Then we'll see how much silver we got there. What I'll probably do is just take the paper, once it's reasonably clean out, put it in a crucible, and melt it down in my foundry furnace and cast a little bar. And that's probably the best way to see just how much silver we have accumulated here. So anyway, between this draining and me rinsing it, it's probably going to be into tomorrow before I can do that. So we'll pick up here tomorrow. Alrighty, I have rinsed the blue liquid out of this stuff. Well, we got a thick layer of silver mud down here on the bottom of this filter. That is nice. Let me rinse it a little more now, get it off my finger. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut off the excess paper around the top of the silver layer here. And then I'm going to stuff what's left into this brand new crucible. And we'll put this in the foundry furnace with a little bit of borax. Get this all melted down and see just how much silver we have here. I mean, it looks like a lot, but silver, when it's wet, always looks like a lot. It's fluffy. When it dries out, melts down, maybe not quite so much. But I'm going to be positive. I'm going to think positive. And we're going to assume that not only is there enough silver here for me to break even on this, but maybe for me and Johnny to make a profit. That would be great. So let me get it in the crucible. We'll go over to the foundry furnace and we'll melt it down. Okay, I've got the crucible here with the filter full of silver powder. I'm going to add some borax to it to help absorb any impurities. And I'm just sort of, I don't know, eyeballing amounts here. I'll put a little bit more in the borax. And I've got some potassium nitrate here, which I made myself. A whole series of videos on making this stuff. I'll put a link in the upper right. You can check that out. And again, I'm just going to eyeball this, put a little bit of this in here to helpfully absorb or burn off the paper in there and any carbon that's left behind. That's the theory anyway. We'll see how it works. Mix that up a little bit. Then we're going to get this in the foundry furnace and fire it up. You can melt that silver down and pour ourselves a little bar that we could weigh and see what our yield was from those Mylars. We get the crucible in the foundry furnace and get it lit. Well, that's going to take a while to melt. Meanwhile, I'll get the molds and everything set up and ready to go. Alright, I can see that the stuff in the crucible there is melting down pretty quick. I'll give you a look with my phone, but I'm going to start preheating the mold. Get any moisture out of it so we don't have any steam explosions. But let me give you a look at that with my phone. melting down. I see some little fiery sparks on the surface. That's probably carbon from the paper burning into potassium nitrate. All right, so this is working. Make sure everything melts really good. All the silver melts, and then we'll pour. All right, I think we're all melted. Let me get my welding gloves on, and we'll pour us a little bar and see just how much silver we got from those keyboard Mylars. Turn the heat off. Whoops. Down here to keep from falling the concrete. Oh, brought the plinth out too. Well, I could tell most of what just went in the mold was slag. It was not mostly silver, it was mostly slag. So once that hardens up, I'll have to chip all the slag off that, and we'll see how much silver's in there. So just give that a chance to cool off and harden up. Okay, this has had a chance to cool down. Let's see if this is actually going to come out of the mold. Looks like it's stuck in there pretty darn good, actually. Well, that is unfortunate. I can see that the slag's all cracked up, but it's still holding on to the inside of the mold pretty good. I don't want to ruin my... Oh, there it went. Okay. We still got some slag in there, but here's the silver. It's already cooled off enough. It's not steaming. All right, good. So I will get that out of there and hammer off what slag is on it, and we'll weigh it and see what we got. See if we can calculate some sort of yield from this month-long experiment. All right, I have hammered the vast bulk of the slag off of it, but it's still pretty ugly and dirty. I think what I'm going to do is give it a boil in some dilute sulfuric acid, see if I can get more of the slag off. I think what's left on there really doesn't amount to much. It just makes it look ugly. But I think I could weigh it right now, but I'm going to give it a boil first and then see if that just improves it any. All right, here's our little ingot of silver. It's heavy, so I'm not going to drop it in because it'll blow the bottom out of the beaker, I'm sure. All right, put some distilled water on it. Going to add some concentrated sulfuric acid drain cleaner. That should be plenty. And we'll give this thing a good long boil and see how well that cleans it up. All right. That's going to take a little while. There we are. We've come up to a boil. I'm going to let that boil for a good while. See if we can clean that up any. Then weigh it. All right. I boiled this thing in dilute sulfuric acid for quite a while. I got rid of most of that very red slag that was left. It was an interesting color slag. Let's weigh this and see how much silver we've got here. Then maybe we can calculate a yield. D8.89. Try that again. D52.87. 52.87. Okay. 88. 87. 88. We'll go with 88. 52.88. So let's see. A little back of the envelope calculation here. We had 2,884 grams of Mylars to start with, and we got 52.88 grams of silver out of it. That gives us about a 1.8% yield, which is not too shabby. Could we done better? I think we could have done better. An industrial crosscut shredder probably would have shredded those Mylars a lot finer. We probably would get a lot more silver out of them. And of course, incinerating them and processing the ashes would have gotten all the silver out of them. But I'm not prepared to incinerate that much plastic here in my own backyard. It's just going to be way too smoky and stinky. But crosscut shredder, a decent one, I think would get a lot more of the silver out. I don't know if we get double out, but we'd probably wind up with more. Yeah, the number's going down over time. It's the wind. Let's see. So that was the yield, 1.8%. Did I make a profit? Well, I figure I used about $15 worth of nitric acid to extract this silver from those Mylars, and got 1.7 ounces, almost exactly 1.7 troy ounces of silver out of it here. And the current price of silver, I just looked it up, it's been going up like a rocket. $50, 10.4 cents a troy ounce. So this represents about $85.19 worth of silver. So yeah, I would say I have more than quadrupled my money. Well, it's Johnny's silver, but still, you know, I got 4 times the money in silver here as the chemicals I used to extract it. So yeah, we actually made a profit. I didn't put any, reasonable amount of money towards my own time and effort, but still, most of it was just letting the stuff sit in a bucket for a couple of weeks at a time. So there wasn't that much effort in it, shredding it. That was where the effort was. And that didn't take too long. Wore gloves so I didn't get blisters. So I think we did okay. So Johnny, you'll have to give that some thought about whether you want to continue collecting Mylars or not, considering the 1.8% yield we got here, which I think is really not that bad. So yeah, you'll have to decide whether it's worth your time to continue collecting Mylars. I know they're not that difficult to get out of keyboards, and I know you process a lot of keyboards. So I'm going to give you a preview of what we're going to do with this silver in the not too distant future. So don't tune out yet. I have been processing silver for Johnny from other sources, and I have already quite a lot of it from his relay contacts and stuff. So we're going to add this to it. And what I plan on doing in the future, not too distant future, I hope, is I want to remelt these bars, including this, and try and make them prettier. Because the bars I poured for Johnny, and I'll put a link to that video where I poured these bars, are not that pretty, I have to say. What are we on here? We got what? So we got 1.676 kilos of silver here. Yes, I know, Richard, there's a plastic bag there. You don't have to remind me. 1.676 kilos of silver, or 1,676 grams. So yeah, I want to melt all this stuff down again and see if I can cast some prettier looking bars, because these first bars I cast were not that pretty, and I've got some ideas on how to do it better. Talk to my buddy Jim about it. So that's what we're going to do in a future video, hopefully not too far down the road. So subscribe to see that future video where I re-pour these bars. And if you guys found this video at all interesting, educational, informative, inspirational, whatever, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching this one. Bye.